let's start at the beginning, man. How did you really get into skiing? Because you're from Manitoulin Island, and there's not a lot of skiing and stuff like that up there to begin with. So what is life as a kid like?
Okay, so this is like perfect. So like, first of all, because I'm like super into this stuff and I get super passionate when I talk about like skiing.
Yeah.
At any point in time, just like cut me off and ask me a question because I'll just like talk, which
no,
is
it's all
gonna be good. So like, first of all, you're totally right. Like coming from Manitoulin Island, like I should be into hunting deers and like snow machining and ice fishing. Like there's no reason that I found a passion in extreme sports because like it just doesn't happen. Like normally, if you grow up in Manitoulin Island, like you just stay there. Like you just grow up there, and your kids go to school there, and you retire, and that's the end of that. And I don't know what it was about for me, but like I started off playing hockey, and as I got better at hockey, I joined AAA, and the closest team was Sudbury, so I had to drive like an hour and a half to go to hockey rinks and play in Sudbury. And at the time, the goal was like, let's go to the NHL, right? Like.
Yeah.
Just have a dream. I always had like a dream of making it professional whenever I try. Like, you know, with MMA or any of that stuff, like, it's always nice to just have a dream even if you don't achieve it because like, there's a reason of doing it.
Yeah.
So for hockey, it was like, let's go to the NHL. But unfortunately, the tallest I ever grew was 5'7", 150 pounds, and I just got crushed once I got into my teenage years. I was getting my collarbones broken, and it was just like, okay, I'm good at hockey, but if I get hit, I'm done. Like, it's unfortunate. And my best friend at the time, he ended up making it to the Oshawa Generals and played in the OHL, and then that's about as far as he made. But he was 6'1", 195 pounds, and he was still the smallest on his team. So it was like, I just wasn't for me. I wasn't that good at hockey that I was going to be like little Martin St. Louis and be ripping around scoring hat tricks at 5'7". So then I just surrounded, like, I don't know how it happened, but in Little Current, which is the town I'm from, there was 4 kids that are still my best friends to this day, in all different ages. Like my best friend Carson is 1 year younger than me, so I'm 29. He's 28 now. And then my next best friend Chris, he's 3 years younger than Carson. And then Chris's younger brother Ryan is like 3 years younger than him. So like, he'd be like 9 years old, and I'd be 16.
Yeah.
So, skateboarding, rollerblading, trampolining, skiing, snowboarding, mountain biking, like it didn't matter. And so all 4 of us, like school would end, we'd hit each other up on that. Well, no, it wasn't even cell phones. We'd drive to each other's houses, like on our, like either get dropped off or bike, knock on the door. Is Chris home? Not today. Bam. Okay, I'm going to go to Carson's house, knock on his door. Are you home? Yeah, Carson's home. And then we just go skateboarding until the lamps would switch on, and at that time, oh, dinner time to go home. And that's what we did, like, every single day growing up. And then eventually, I just kind of got over hockey and was like, I can be a professional skateboarder. Like, that's the new dream. I still had to play hockey because my dad was like, he paid so much money for me to be a hockey player. Yeah. But like as soon as I got done playing hockey, like the skateboard came out and I had rails in the backyard, and I'd end up twisting my ankle skateboarding, which would ruin hockey. And then I get in a fight with my dad, and I was like, honestly, I don't want to go to Sudbury anymore. Like I just want to skateboard. Yeah. And so I decided at the time, like, you know what, I'm just gonna chase skateboarding. From there, I lucked out that in Little Current, they decided to open up a skateboard shop called Borderline Skate Shop, and they ended up sponsoring me. And when I sent him my sponsor me tape, and it was like, at that time, I wasn't even that good, but like, I was the only skateboarder there, so they started giving me, every time I broke a board, I would get like half off. Yeah. And then I got to a certain point in time where I actually started getting pretty damn good at skateboarding. Like, I was all in like 13 sets, and like kickflip, board slide down handrail, like a small like 5 set. And he started giving me, like, every other board that I broke, I get a free one. Because one year I broke 21 skateboards in a single summer. God. Like, that's how hard I was going. Yeah. And I'd, like, buy a board, he'd set it up, I'd leave, and then try to, like, kickflip down, like, a 10 set and snap the board, and I'd walk back in, he'd just put another deck on, like, an hour later, and then he'd give it to me, and I'd go back out and try it again. Oh, my God, dude. Then, obviously, winter hits. Okay, I can't go skateboarding. So what am I going to do? A snowboard. It's close to skateboarding, so I'm going to work on my board sleds on a snowboard, and then transition to snowboarding. I want to be a pro snowboarder and skateboarder, just like Shaun White. That'll be super sick. Like, go to the Dew Tour for, like, both. Like, how sick would that be? And, obviously, very impressive for someone to be professional at 2 sports, but that's the way it was. And my best friend, Carson, he got the very first ever twin-tip skis the yellow ones, the Solomon 1080s with like the tip guards.
Yeah.
That you saw like way back with JP Auclair doing the first like backflip mute grab. He's like, dude, you can ski backwards on these things. And I was like, well, I play hockey. I mean, it can't be much harder than hockey. I'll just like strap these bad boys on.
Yeah. And
he'd been skiing for like 5 years, something like that. And then my first day I did a backflip in both way 360s, like just skating in, like off a picnic table, dropped in, backflip, landed it. And he just like got so mad at me. Like my best friend didn't talk to me for like a week because I just did a backflip, and he was like, okay, just have my skis, like that's it, like I quit. Like, why don't you stick to snowboarding? Like, don't ski. And I was like, fine, I won't ski. And so I stuck to snowboarding for like another couple of years because he got mad at me.
Yeah.
And then eventually, like, I was like, I'm gonna try skiing because like I think it's easier than snowboarding. I can like already do flips.
Yeah.
And then skiing kind of took over. So that was the transition of wanting to be a pro skateboarder. Did some snowboarding to pass the time. Figured out the skiing was the easiest one that I like could use my hockey background and like trampolining. And then skiing was like the one that I tried to pursue the most, and then obviously it kind of paid off that I picked the right one.
Yeah, that's hilarious. That's funny. I kind of got into it the same way, not like fully the same way. I was never really into skateboarding, but like I was into hockey, and obviously you know how big I was. When I was in high school competing, like playing hockey and like A and stuff, I was like 4'8", 4'10", and I weighed like 90 pounds. So it was not like I was good for my height and my size, but like people could literally just put their hand on me and knock me over. And then I got into skiing.
Yeah.
I used to ski and snowboard, and then I started doing park in both. And I kept catching my front edges on rails on the snowboard and like catching my back edge trying to hit jumps. And I was like, skiing's a lot easier. And I kind of decided, I was like, it's a lot easier for park right now. I'm gonna do that.
You can figure out a snowplow without any training. Your body, if you have any sort of coordination or balance and you need to stop on skis, you can kind of like jam your feet out to the sides.
Yeah.
But a snowboard, it's like you turn sideways, hook the toe edge, break your wrist, and you're like, it's over, like so quick.
That's enough of that. So, but Manitoulin, there's not a lot of skiing. Is there a ski hill out there? I don't think so, right?
So before I was born, there used to be a ski hill that had 2 runs.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the name of it was. Like, it was in between where I lived and like the next town, and it was all volunteer run. Like there was an actual lift, but it was all volunteer run, similar to like an Espanola has Boogie Mountain.
Yeah.
Where Boomhauer's from, skied from. So it was smaller even than that, but it was just closed down like when I grew up. So I mean, the odd times on like a POW day, I get our parents to drive us out there, and we would make little videos. There used to be kind of a crappy half pipe that we could build little side hits on and do like our backflips out of and stuff. But right off the bat, like my introduction to skiing was urban. Like there was, my dad used to work at a manor where like old people live, or like as they retire, they get put in a home, and it had like a 100-foot high hill, and we would go there and dig rails into the ground in September so they would harden, like throughout September, October, November, and just hope no one undug them. So when it froze, like the ground hardened, they'd be like locked in for the winter time. Yeah. And then every day we just hike there, set up a tripod, and just like, you know, the night before watch an old Poor Boys movie of someone doing like a front 270 out. And then us just trying to be like, okay, how did he do that? He did something with his edges. Now we know it's called scissoring your skis, but like we didn't know terms for it. He's like, oh man, like he did something with his legs where he kind of like did this. So let's like see what happens. And of course we were like sharp edges, like attaching our edges and dragging our back foots, doing broken slides, so we didn't know what we were doing properly. And eventually, like one of us would get the front two, but double hand drag, and then be like, "Oh, dude, you almost had it!" Like, "Oh man!" And then they hike the next person to get it, and finally someone would get the front two, and then it was like, "What's the next trick?" Back two. Okay, what's the next trick? And so right off the bat, it was that, and then it was, okay, this rail's not long enough. What's around town? Okay, if we go downtown, there's like a big cement ledge. Let's stack a bunch of snow and slide down the cement ledge. So it was kind of crazy that like my introduction was doing like the hardest thing possible, like trying to concrete ledge as my rail, opposed to like in a train park. Yeah. So once I eventually got to Mount St. Louis, then it was easy because I was like, oh my god, these things are waxed. Like the rail's meant to be slid. Like this is easy. So I almost had it like it's like training with ankle weights. And then you take them off, and all of a sudden the rails are meant to be slid, and all of a sudden my progression went like through the roof once I got to a ski hill. But I'm glad that I did urban first, because it just like it took me on the perfect trajectory of like what I ended up being like before a ski coach. Like you said, it was like the level 1 stuff. Like that maybe if I started a ski hill, maybe I would have chose competitions, which isn't like a bad thing. Obviously, I coach it, but like because I did urban and like watched films every single day and then tried to reenact that, that's my path that I chose. So kind of cool.
No, that's awesome. That was one of my things I'd written down there because I was gonna ask you how you got into urban skiing, but it's funny because it's like, yeah, exactly. You already answered. You're one step ahead.
That's all I had. Yeah.
But like, no, it's interesting because like it's not something that you'll see nowadays. It would be hard for me to handpick a skier coming up that came up in a way like that. Like I think my generation, Pat's generation, is probably pretty close to like the last generation that would have kind of touched on that. And even I didn't like do it like that much. Like for me, my skiing was like learning how to ski and getting into skiing was like hitting bumps on the side of the hill and stuff like that, doing 360s, and then building rails in my backyard and like making little jumps off snowplow, like down a hill into a snowplow thing. I'd like dig out a jump off out of like a big snowplow pile and stuff like that, and then like go to the hills. But like I'd never hit like urban, like legit urban rails or anything like that when I was not until I had gotten like at least a couple years into like skiing, and I was like saw a couple movies and I was interested.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, like the very first handrail I hit wasn't like 25-foot down, flat down. Like it was like, hey, like there's an old movie in Poor Boys where Candy Tovek's in War, he like goes up this quarter pipe and he goes like 30 feet up into a tree.
Yeah. And
he's on it sideways. They get a photo of him and he pops back down. It's like the super legendary shot.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, we should try to do something like that. But like there was no bungees back then. There was no winches. We hardly had hills. So like I found a tree. It was probably something you'd find in your backyard.
Yeah.
And like had my buddies like push me like with a snow machine, and then like I maybe went 3 feet up the tree. Like when I did it, it felt so damn cool. I was like, oh crap, man, I'm on the tree, I'm stalling it. And then I go back and watch it on like the Sony action cam and be like, holy crap, that looks tiny. Like it wasn't even like worth film. But like when I did it, I thought I was Candy Dovex, and then you're like, oh my god, that's embarrassing.
You watch it like, oh my god.
Like don't use the clip. But like, yeah. So it started with like stuff like that, and then obviously now you go to Whistler and they have quarter pipes onto trees and stuff like that. And you're like, oh my god, this is actually in the parks now. But